I've been Nicola. He's been Liam. But you knew that?
Why don't you just say I'm
I've
been is like that you're dead.
I know, yeah. I am Nicola Fox Hamilton.
Okay, start the whole thing again.
I don't even know who I am anymore. Okay. Who are you?
There's the intros.
Yeah, I know. Welcome to In Bits, the podcast that deconstructs our digital lives. I'm Nicola.
And I'm Liam.
And we are both lecturers in IEDT in psychology and cyberpsychology. So Liam, what are you in bits about today?
I'm in bits about, it's a bit of a broad one to a point. So I'm in bits about social media, but its relationship with body image or how we talk about body image.
Okay. So I imagine this is going to be a super uplifting, positive kind of episode then, yeah?
So this is the biggest content warning I've done.
As expected.
I'm going to talk about social media and its relationship with body image, and obviously that's can be quite triggering for some people, regardless of. Geez, where do we start? Positive and negative relationships between social media and body image. I'd advise skipping this episode entirely if you or someone close to you has experienced any form of eating disorder.
Or if you're triggered by it, yeah.
Yeah. I would advise avoiding it because it's not a comfortable conversation to have, and unless you're extremely resilient to it, having a discussion or listening to people talk about eating disorders can be triggering.
Yeah. I assume that you're going to avoid talking about things like calorie counts and weights and stuff like that.
I'm going to talk about it very briefly.
Okay.
In relation to something else, but I'm not actually going down that road.
Okay.
So I would advise that if any of these topics, if you do listen to the episode, are triggering or upsetting, to stop. I would recommend you go to things like Bodywhys, Jigsaw, and I wouldn't normally flag resources at the top of an episode, but if you're going to stop it, they're two really, really good resources that we should signpost at the very beginning. We're going to link to a number of these, but I wanted to highlight them just in case people skip.
Okay.
So we're not going to go down that route, but we are going to talk about body satisfaction and dissatisfaction, which is often positively correlated or related to eating disorders.
Okay. So we're basically saying, don't listen to our podcast.
Yeah.
That's a good start.
It's hard, and it's not making light of it, but it's just, it is something that we need to talk about. And it's, I give this as a lecture to students, and where we talk around social media and body image generally, and we'll talk about eating disorders and what they are and the signposts around them. And generally it's one of those lectures where no one is kind of like chatting to each other. You have the audience's full attention because of how serious and upsetting it can be.
Okay.
So let's move away from that. How you shift the tone.
I'll just make really inappropriate jokes the whole way through to keep it light.
Okay, yeah. So we're going to talk about body images and our perceptions of body image. So these are our internal perspectives or ratings, self-evaluations of how we look or how we feel how we look. Okay, so it's...
which is not always accurate, right?
Well, it's never accurate. I'd argue it's very,
If you've ever seen a photograph
accurate
of yourself and you're like, what? That's how I look?
So often this topic, we in psychology research, we talk about how satisfied or dissatisfied you are generally in your body image. And I would say how we are or how we may be satisfied or dissatisfied, because we may not have a full awareness of how we feel. So we do empirically measure this, and I'm not going to go down a research methods trope around this.
What?
Yeah, it's a shock.
So restrained of you.
So there are empirically valid measures that are quantitative questionnaires, like Likert responses around body image. And we're not going there because I don't want... because some of the questions themselves for dissatisfaction particularly, so like I'm the chair of our ethics committee, there's no way a student is using a dissatisfaction scale. We can use satisfaction, which is obviously just positively framed, and it still assesses dissatisfaction too.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're talking specifically around social media, Nick, are there any social media trends or stories you can think of in relation to body image, satisfaction or dissatisfaction? So I literally unpinned a grenade here.
Well, considering this is an area, like discourse around fitness, wellness, health, body image and stuff is something that I'm just generally interested in. I don't actually know a lot about the research on it, but I know a lot about the social discourse on it from like the kind of podcasts I listen to, like Maintenance Phase, and from other content that I'd consume. So I'm kind of aware of like diet culture and all those things. Also, I grew up in the 90s as a teenager, which was Kate Moss and heroin chic and stuff. Heroin chic. Do you not remember that? Oh, you would.
No, I remember like
you were a
Kate
baby.
Moss being like super thin,
extremely thin. Heroin chic was
never heard
like
of the term. I was probably too young.
Yeah, you probably were.
Stop.
Showing my age here. It was a really delightful fashion trend where all of the models were skeletally thin and had dark circles under their eyes, and they just looked sort of half dead and lank and like folded over and just like they were on heroin.
Like Tim Burton kind of.
A little bit, but less cute.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the trend, and that was the level of thinness that you were supposed to aspire to in the 90s. You know, Kate Moss's thing about nothing tastes as good as skinny feels.
Oh, God. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I grew up with. But more recently, there's been loads of stuff around the idea of almond moms.
Okay, I'm going to talk about almond moms.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're fascinating. So you're going to talk about it. I'm not going to describe it then.
Yeah, I have details on almond moms and their relationship to what they do in terms of eating disorder behavior.
Okay, yeah. So like this stuff hasn't really gone away. There's been a lot more body positivity, which is really good. But I'm also seeing a little bit of a return to, especially with all the Ozempic discourse and a lot of celebrities who were perfectly gorgeous and lovely, suddenly on Ozempic getting extremely thin. A lot of return to this overly thin aesthetic. The super low-rise jeans also encouraged by that overly thin aesthetics. You can't wear them if you're not extraordinarily thin. All this kind of stuff. So it's an ongoing battle against diet culture and
it's a very nuanced kind of discourse when you look at it online between satisfaction and dissatisfaction or positive or negative body image and the different role models around it. And what I not find slightly brings a sense of relief, but like someone who is an uber celebrity does not feel better about themselves than you do. We're all in this same kind of trope where we're feeling potentially negative about ourselves, or even if it's not like your entire perception of body image is negative, even a small part that you feel dissatisfied with.
I mean, at least we're not under the level of scrutiny that a celebrity is. So while in comparison to me, they may be much slimmer or much like more toned or fit or whatever it is, I'm not under that level of scrutiny. And like, I'm a woman at middle age. I'm not under very much scrutiny at all anymore, which is great. So there's definitely less scrutiny. The older you get as a woman, you start to become invisible, which is actually quite lovely. I quite appreciate that. But yeah, it's nuanced, and unfortunately a lot of the messaging that you see online, particularly from wellness influencer, which is the rebrand of diet, is not nuanced.
No. And this kind of brings me to what is called pro-ana content.
God, yeah.
Okay. And algorithmic kind of behaviors do impact this. So if you start following specific influencers or behaviors, or you watch a video where someone is talking about diet, it can very quickly be related to pro-ana content. And pro-ana is pro-anorexia content, where people are giving advice to each other about how to become thinner. And if you're a younger person and you don't spot that this is pro-ana content at first, you adopt potentially some of these behaviors, and that can have a negative impact.
Yeah. And I know the platforms have tried to tackle this to a degree, so they look for the hashtags and the keywords and stuff, but of course they just change and morph so quickly over time because the people know that they're being tracked and targeted for it.
They do, but it's also like, it's very easy to find.
It is.
Like, even in the research for this episode, and I was trying to avoid that. I was looking for influencers and searching around body image, and it doesn't take a lot. For me, it's certainly in searching to find pro-ana content.
Yeah.
And it's very subtle.
Yeah.
And that is the concerning aspect or dangerous aspect of this.
Yeah.
And I don't want to use like sensationalist language, but it is a dangerous social media trend.
And a lot of it is masquerading as wellness. I mean, I don't know if you saw the story just the other day about the young woman who died in, I don't know if she was in the Philippines or Indonesia. I can't remember exactly where she was, but she was following a fruit-only diet.
Right.
And she was anorexic, essentially. Well, had a severe eating disorder, but she was like spurred on by and congratulated by her audience for being so healthy, and it was such a pure diet and all of this stuff. But she actually died from it. Like, she became incredibly thin.
It's like extremely negative social support.
Yeah.
Let's move it into a slightly lighter space. Slightly lighter, not a massively lighter. Because I'm going to talk about, like, you spoke about like Kate Moss and stuff, and I have examples of that when we talk about media in a minute, and I have examples of that from like when I was growing up. Because it was only the other day. But in terms of, we spoke about it, almond moms. So if you've not heard what an almond mom is, it's a popular social media term, typically a mother, not always a mother.
Not
really
always.
Importantly, don't tar everyone with the same brush. They're highly influenced by diet culture or wellness culture, and they project a restrictive or an unhealthy eating habit, and they often follow this themselves and then project it onto their child. So it had originated with Yolanda Hadid, so Gigi Hadid's mom, and she advised her to eat a couple of almonds when she complained she was feeling weak in relation to diet.
And to chew them slowly.
To chew them slowly, so they
savor
will last
them,
longer.
yeah.
Savor those like 1 or 2 almonds. And it's a pattern of encouraging minimal eating and unhealthy behaviour. So it is very similar to problematic role model behaviours in terms of pro-ana content.
In fairness, her mom would have grown up with awful diet culture as well, like all women and men, but more so women in the old days, men now, but have grown up with such ingrained diet culture. So like to a certain extent, while I'm looking at this and saying this is so abusive, I'm also looking and going, it's what she learned as normal and healthy and part of wellness. So there's a certain amount of...
Before her mum has advised her to eat almonds, she's also already been on an extremely restrictive diet. So the almonds aren't the problem.
No.
So there is some trends or some similar behaviours we can look at here. So regularly imposing dietary or strict rules, excessively promoting like clean or healthy eating, like we've discussed. Modelling behaviours like orthexia or chronic dieting.
You might have to explain what orthorexia is for people who don't know.
So orthexia is like compulsive exercise. And it's often patterned with very restrictive dieting as well. There are other things that can happen with, amongst all eating disorders as well. So like caffeine tablets in fitness or wellness influencers, taking different kind of like herbal supplements that will aid in fat loss or fat binders, particularly products that will promote testosterone production. From a herbal perspective, this is before we get down to testosterone roots, anything like that. And then making comments around your child. So shaming behavior, criticizing choices that they might make, portion sizes, all of those happening in the background. So it's not just how it's projected in social media, it's actual real life as well.
Yeah. And commentary on what you're eating and how much and when, all those kind of things. Yeah.
But by doing that, you then develop a sense of poor body image in that person who it's directed towards. And you obviously have a poor perception of body image yourself, low self-esteem, disordered eating patterns, all of that. And that's modern diet culture.
And it's actually just growing up as usually a woman, but often young men now as well. Like my mum would have made comments just offhand, not with any really negative intention, probably thinking it was helpful. But like I still remember them. She doesn't remember them, but I still remember them. Those kind of things really, really stick with you.
But I think if someone comments on your body image, it's never going to be, or it's certainly never going to go away. If you were experiencing low self-esteem or you're already in a space where you're anxious. Remember, we're talking about adolescents at the moment.
Yeah.
So they don't feel comfortable in their own bodies. Their physical development is all over the place. Their hormones are like this firework factory. So they shouldn't feel okay in themselves. And then someone else comes along who's a role model, who they respect, who they trust and who they love and says, do you really need that? Okay.
Or, those jeans don't look great on you.
But like these small niggling comments can erode someone's self-esteem. So I wanted to start by discussing some of the differences between males and females, or men and women, based on the type of media they consume. So it was TV consumption versus internet consumption. So this is Dougherty and colleagues in 2018, and they explored trait physical appearance comparisons across these two different types of media. And
that's basically like how much you are inherently likely to compare yourself physically to others, right? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay, so with that, they looked at the type of media again with undergraduate students. So they used a decent sample, 137 males. So it was a little bit more in terms of the female sample, all around 21. An important finding was around trait appearance comparison.
Okay. So people who are more likely to compare themselves.
Someone who's more likely to compare themselves to someone else.
On their appearance, yeah.
Generally. That then makes that person more vulnerable to negative perceptions of body image, because if they're comparing themselves all the time.
Of course, yeah.
And I'm going to talk about this in terms of males and females a little bit later. But for this trait comparison in this study, so they compared to TV exposure and internet exposure, with female participants, they found the greater TV exposure predicted negative evaluations of personal appearance.
Okay, but not internet?
So,
or wait for it.
Internet use was not significantly associated in that particular study.
That's interesting.
The reason I've picked out this study is that it's not always the internet that's the problem.
Yeah, well, there's like, as we discussed from the start, there's this whole wider societal discourse and culture around weight and body image and body satisfaction and wellness in inverted commas and all of that. So there's a lot going on.
This is also one study. Okay.
Of course.
And I'm going to give you studies that do find that the internet, or so particularly or specifically social media consumption. So this is internet use media consumption.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Okay. By comparison to men, they found that high trait appearance comparison, so comparing yourselves again, also predicted greater body dissatisfaction with males.
Okay.
But it wasn't seen with TV exposure.
So it was only in internet for them?
Only in internet exposure in them. And they typically engaged in physical appearance comparisons to someone else, and that then led them susceptible to negative perceptions of their own body image. So it was around physical appearance comparisons, so like muscularity. In that study.
I wonder why. I wonder, is it because the kind of men you see in TV are so unrealistic, and maybe the ones on the internet are more like achievable? If you're more like, I don't understand why that would be.
I do have other studies that are going to look at the type of media.
A
lot of there's a huge amount of research on body dissatisfaction and satisfaction from Australia or ANZAC.
Yeah.
So I'm going to touch on some of those studies. And what I think is helpful is sometimes if we move to a kind of larger meta-analysis on all of this. I have a paper from 2020. They conducted a meta-analysis of 40 studies around body image and generally in the topic we're talking about. So social comparison, image-based social comparison particularly, it does create a negative perception regardless of the space that it is in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This then increases if it's passive consumption. And this isn't just passive consumption online through looking at someone else's Instagram post. It's passive consumption of media where you make a negative evaluation of yourself generally. So this comes back to your discussion around Kate Moss.
TV, film, fashion magazines.
TV, film, you're seeing an advert on the train, anything like that. The type and the source of the consumption or where you see it doesn't actually matter. So if you're seeing a negative perception of body image in a social media platform, that also has the same negative impact. If it's in an advert that you're sat next to at a bus stop.
It's just, the internet is just yet another brick in the wall of saturating us with these images.
And it is. Now, if we move to men, and I'm going to break out men and women, and I'm going to look at a little bit of minority groups. What do you think the challenges faced by men are? So you spoke about the challenges particularly for women.
Yeah.
So if we look at body image perceptions and social media, what do you think their challenges are?
I think it's newer for men, and so it's less discussed, although I've seen more discussion around it now. It's more around leanness and muscularity rather than just thinness in the way that it is for women. Although women, there's been a trend of muscularity and stuff as well. I think, like, when you look at, I know you're talking about social media, but in general, culturally, if you look at what were considered to be like ripped, fit men in films in the 90s and now, they're wildly different. Like the first Wolverine versus Wolverine now, like, it's insane the difference between the two. Like the first, he was very fit. The one now is so highly unachievable and ridiculous almost. And like he has actively talked about how horrible it is to get into that physical state and the effort that goes into it, and that he feels sick and cold and miserable when he's in it. But we're still presenting this image to men as the highly ideal that you should be striving for. So, and I think there's a lot of that online. Like I follow a really nice influencer that I really like called Ben Carpenter, and he breaks down a lot of the myths around diet and wellness and stuff like that. But he also shows examples, like he's extremely fit, and he shows examples of how you can look fit but normal, but then with a little bit of lighting and sucking your stomach in and flexing, how you can look, you know, much more ripped and much more muscular. And like in 2 seconds, you know, the change. And I've seen women do the same thing as well. Like it's like there's a belly and whatever, and then they hold everything in and stretch it, tighten everything and do a particular pose, a particular lighting, and suddenly they look completely ripped. And that's what we see promoted and not the regular version. So I think that's possibly the issues mainly for men.
A lot of the research around kind of men is... It does have an emphasis on muscularity, like we've said, but it does get into like body dysmorphia very quickly. There's a lot of discussion around whether someone is in terms of like fitness, whether someone is like natty or not, so natural, or whether they're using steroids or not. And there's like lots of accusations around different influencers on an ongoing basis.
And there are a lot of influencers using steroids and pretending not to.
Yeah, there are. If you take idealized body images around men, and this can range from like you've said, the extremely ripped Wolverine, the powerlifter, the personal trainer
Liver
aspect
King,
that we see in
so
social
ideal.
media. The what?
The Liver King.
The Liver King.
Oh my God, have you not heard of the Liver King?
I probably have. Who is this?
You're not as chronically online as me.
Do I need my phone?
Oh, you need to look up the Liver King and then describe him to me when you see him.
Okay. Is this gonna? Do I want this in my algorithm?
Do you want this in your eyeballs? Is a better question.
Liver King. Oh, Christ. Right.
So this is a guy who claimed that he got his physique through eating like raw meat and raw liver, etc., and working out. I'll tell you, once you describe what he looks like, I'll then tell you a
He
tiny
kind
bit
of
more.
looks like Jesus, Bear Grylls, and kind of like Daniel Day-Lewis doing a method acting part for Bear Grylls while also being a weightlifter.
And also being on steroids.
But yeah.
Like extremely muscular. Like, do you ever hear the description of someone like that as like a condom stuffed with walnuts?
No. God, okay.
But he claimed to be like very like, well, clean eating, as in a carnivore diet, raw meat, all that kind of stuff, and not on steroids. And it turns out he was absolutely on steroids. There was a big expose about it.
I am not surprised.
No, like when you look at him, yeah.
The point I'm trying to make around dysmorphia, let's bring it back. Come back to class, Nick. Come back.
I'm trying to lighten things up a bit. He's funny,
So,
objectively.
When I was researching this episode, I was looking at different influencers who'd spoken, or famous people, so sports people. And like Tom Daly was one of the people who was discussing his own perceptions of body image and body dysmorphia, feeling that he wasn't muscular enough or thin enough while he was winning like Olympic medals. Which I think if someone who is in incredible athletic Olympic shape,
Like
really
literally peak fitness levels.
isn't happy, then what chance do we have?
That's depressing.
It is, isn't it? So there's a huge amount of research in this space, but one researcher we actually got a chance to speak to at the BPS Cyber Psychology Conference in Birmingham, Dr. Chris Stiff, and he was focusing on his work around kind of interventions with younger males and their perception of body image. So let's take a listen.
Yeah, okay. So I'm Dr. Chris Stiff. I'm a lecturer at Keele University in the School of Psychology. And my main research is, cyber psychology, obviously, but to specialise, I have two main things that I'm really interested in, I suppose. The first is looking at body image and the influence of social media on body image, particularly men. So I focused on that before, and looking at ways we can alleviate issues with body image. So obviously, body dissatisfaction and being unhappy with how you look is quite a prevalent issue at the moment, and it's becoming increasingly a problem with men, as much as it is with women. So I'm looking at ways that we can try and alleviate that, because we need specific gender-specific interventions or materials in order to try and alleviate those issues. So that's one route. And then the other route is looking at the pro-social aspects of video games. I'm particularly interested in prejudice reduction. So using video games as a contact medium, bringing people from two groups together, getting them to interact via a game, and then hopefully their prejudice is reduced, so their feelings of animosity towards each other is reduced and generalised to the groups as a whole. That's a sort of tenet of contact hypotheses.
At this conference, you were presenting around younger people, particularly males, on Instagram and social media, and I found it really interesting because a lot of the research tends to focus on women, or young women particularly, because they're kind of typically like hypersexualized in social media. But younger males have this like hypermuscularity particularly, and we're seeing a lot of younger males unfortunately looking for like whether it's thinspiration or like how to achieve much more muscular bodies. And there's this like tangent also at the same time within that algorithm around like steroid use and like creatine and protein use at a much earlier age than we would have seen. Yeah. So like I found your talk really, really interesting from that perspective, but it's also there's not enough research actually happening with younger males around that.
No, there isn't. And like you say, that's a real issue. You know, if you look at a lot of the popular media on the popular telly programs, it's replete with very muscular men who are very well sculpted, very well defined. And then outside of that, I know lots of films will use examples of, men looking very muscular, looking very toned. And there often isn't explanation for how that comes about. This is part of my research, really. It's almost normative, that's just how men look. And if you don't measure up to that, then that's quite, makes you feel very bad about your own body. If you speak to a lot of these people, actors will often mention about how grueling and horrible it is to stay in that sort of shape and the things that they go through. But that obviously, you don't see that on camera. You just see so-and-so wake up in the morning, get up, put his trousers and his top on, and he's got this fabulous body right from the get-go. But actually, that actor is probably dehydrated, very uncomfortable, has been working out beforehand, and all this sort of stuff. So that's missing. So people just see these muscular bodies.
But what's also missing is like this huge team of chefs, personal trainers, all of that other stuff in the background. Yeah. But separate to like film, you also see particularly like fitness influencers discussing that even if they're in the best shape of their lives, they still have body dissatisfaction or body dysmorphia. And they say that, like, we've spoken about a couple of different fitness influencers who do this from a positive perspective and try to dispel it. But typically they talk about how they're in the best shape of their lives and they feel fat, and they're like have like 4% body fat. Yeah. And they cling to this, and then younger people see this as well, and they're like, this unobtainable target is there.
This is the fascinating thing about body image and weight loss and all those sort of related topics is what's the metric by which you are happy with your body? Because there's often this tendency to go by weight, say. So you look at the number, your weight, and then if that number goes down, that's good. But it's much more complex than that. It's much more, there's more to it than that. If you look at, if we take a bit of an extreme example, if we look at athletes, they are often, their weight may go up, as they increase muscle mass and things. So that number is going up, which we would normally say was bad. The norm is that it's bad, but that's not the case. And then something that I think is really going to be interesting to look at in the next few years is the increasing use of weight loss injections, because there is this growing trend. It's very easy to get hold of them and use them. And again, you use them and the number goes down, so you're happy. But are you happy? Is that a good thing? And, some people might say, yeah, that's what I wanted. I wanted to lose 5 pounds and I've lost it and I'm happy. But I think you will also find a number of people who the weight issue that they perceive is wrapped up in a whole load of other things, and that number can never really go down enough.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's all sorts of associated physiological issues with those things. You know, you're not building good habits, you're not building muscle tone, you know, you're just losing weight. So that isn't very healthy, really.
I think it's so sad to see this happening for men, because there wasn't the same pressure for a long time. As the pressure for women goes back so far, and it was really positive that wasn't happening for men. And to see it coming in like this now is awful. But I'd love you to talk about what kind of results you're getting. So your research is looking at interventions to reduce body dissatisfaction and so on. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we're using an intervention that we've developed, which is essentially some slides, PowerPoint slides, so, you know, images, and they try and explain what we consider to be the two routes that these things can be affected by. So the first one is media literacy, so just simply educating people about the veracity of the images they might see or lack of, and that includes digital manipulation. So I think everyone is fairly well versed in things like Photoshop, but you know, it's so easy to do. You can do it on your phone these days. It is often undetectable. It's that what's it called, like a false bias. There's some sort of clever, I should probably know this as a researcher, but if Photoshop has been done well, you won't know it's there. So you only detect the bad Photoshop.
A bit like plastic surgery, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, plastic surgery makes you look bad, but actually the good plastic surgery, you don't know it's there.
Yeah.
So you're missing that. So the media literacy is one, and then talking about, you know, techniques, things that happen, like we were talking about with the actors, you know, stuff is happening off camera. This is difficult. This is their job. So that's one route. And then the other is what the term cognitive restructuring. So this is like cognitive behavioral therapy, essentially, and getting people to think a bit more critically about what they think when they look at images, idealized images. So what's going through your mind? Are you looking at that and thinking, oh, I look awful compared to that, I look horrible? And trying to make them aware of those thoughts, cognitions, and maybe change them to something more adaptive, or even eliminate them in the same way that we do with cognitive behavioral therapy, where we try and reduce those sort of invasive thoughts. So we have these materials which outline these things and kind of explain them to participants with examples, and they feed into the issues that are male related. So they have pictures of men in them rather than women. And then they talk about muscularity and leanness, which is a salient issue for men over thinness. Thinness is still an issue too. But yeah, muscularity and leanness is more prevalent in that. So yeah, we present those to participants and see if that helps with their body images in a simple sense. Yeah. I
know we're doing another study where you brought this into Instagram. So rather than PowerPoint slides, you were bringing it into the environment where they might see it, which I think is really interesting. And probably more effective long-term for a wider scale intervention. Would you consider working with influencers who are sort of already doing stuff in this space, but bringing your evidence base to them and saying, this is the stuff that we know works?
Yeah.
And maybe you could create stuff like this.
I'd really like to do that. I have seen a couple online, and I did message one of them, but you know, they probably get thousands of messages. So maybe I need to try that again in a more persuasive way. I don't know. But yeah, I think that would be really good. So that's the next step, essentially. We start very simple, kind of laboratory based, and now we're moving on to, well, how can we actually implement this? How can we have some impact? So yeah, I'm actually starting to look at ways of facilitating impact. So hopefully, contacting some of those sort of influencers. I've been in touch with some male mental health charities to talk about this, but also, you know, if there are other pressing issues, to try and work on maybe some co-created research with them on what issues they think are pressing for male mental health. So yeah, I need to wait to hear back from them again. They probably get hundreds of emails. So and the challenge as well, if you ever have this, is I always think that when I email them, it sounds like I'm selling something. So I always have to put, can I work with you and produce this thing for free? It's like, So I always have to put this disclaimer at the bottom saying, just so it's clear, I'm not selling anything. I'm a researcher. Here's my webpage, but who knows so much.
And we're trying to create something useful for you.
For you. So we'll see if anything comes of that.
Cool. We might get you to come on again and talk about your video game research for intergroup tensions, because that is such a fascinating area, and I'd like to do a full episode on that. So thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Your research is so interesting, obviously so needed as well, because it's such an increasing area.
Definitely.
But thank you very much, Chris.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So that was really interesting. I think what I find with Chris's work is that I'm glad that there's actual research being conducted around interventions, and we can see that there is a positive influence happening. So I look forward to seeing what else Chris does with the next stages of his research. So that's in relation to males. Now, females, in relation to body image, this has been going on, I wouldn't say for longer. I think it's just been in the public eye and perception for longer, and women have been objectified or made to feel like their bodies are in the spotlight. And like the earliest example I can think of without having to conduct research is around like the shapes of dresses in Edwardian and Victorian times, emphasizing how they should or should not look. Things like corsets, all those kind of other ways in which women have been pruned and preened. Can you think
even like the heroin chic dates back to the days of TB, where it was called the God, what was it? Something like the beauty illness, or the something like that. Like that wan, pale, rosy cheeked, thin aesthetic was considered incredibly beautiful. Yeah.
Problematic.
It goes way back.
Very problematic.
I'm sure people were looking at cave women in their furs and thinking, that's not very flattering.
But it also reminds me of like there are social or cultural impacts from this. So like even as an adolescent, and even I really hope it still doesn't happen, was around like magazines where they used to highlight particular women who had gained weight or lost weight. So even if you lost weight, you weren't safe.
Oh,
and
then it was like we're worried about you, concern trolling.
Yeah. But they used to like, I don't know what magazine it was, but they used to like have like a red circle that they would highlight like cellulite on celebrities or...
The Daily Mail was really bad for that. The sidebar of shame where they highlighted...
But like this was like pages of celebrities like at the beach or on holiday.
Yeah, look at their thighs, look at their stomach.
So if you think that they didn't feel objectified or had perceptions of negative body image, seeing that stuff, like of course they did.
Like I grew up with Jessica Simpson being considered fat.
Crikey.
I know, and there is no objective way that you could consider her fat at all.
God, okay. I think an important point to differentiate is the role of media, rather than just social media. This thin ideal, thin inspiration, all of these Cosmo, like Vogue, they've all at some point in time have highlighted how important it is to be thin, and they've provided measures of self-objectification. We know that they are related to negative perceptions of mood and body image perceptions generally. In 2008, Harper and colleagues in Australia did a piece of research around this, and they randomized participants into either a group where they viewed a thin, idealized female image, a thin, idealized female image with a man in it, and a product control. So it had no people in it at all. So that's their control group. And all their participants had average or normal but BMI ratings, and they had normal ranges of media consumption and social media consumption. But what they found was that people who viewed adverts of thin, attractive female bodies increased self-objectification compared to women who did it without people. Okay, so in that group. So if it was thin, idealized, they did have a negative impact on them. Now, exposure to thin, ideal images with weight-related, they did increase weight-related negative perceptions on themselves, body dissatisfaction. Now, when they included a man in those images, they didn't increase the effects.
So it stayed the same. It was just as bad, but not worse.
It was just as bad, but not worse.
That's interesting.
So the perception of like having a male in those images, or some like an opposite sex, didn't have.
Because I think there's this perception that women get thin or wear makeup or wear clothes for men. And like to a certain extent, that's true if you're trying to attract a partner or whatever. But like women mostly do it for themselves and for other women.
But this is why I find that this study interesting, is because it's not men who are objectifying women or creating this negative self-perception in this space. But okay, take it back.
Totally is
men
as well.
Objectify women
in this particular space.
But in this research study, they find support that women are self-objectifying themselves.
Yeah.
and creating that negative body image. Now,
I'm also going to take that piece out of context and then have you cancelled.
Okay.
You say men aren't objectifying women.
So, as I'm about to say, it's not all negative. I'm about to reprise myself now. So there are other researchers, again, that have looked at these social media campaigns around body image. And another study related, so it's also in an Australian sample with younger women, typically around the age of 25. And they had campaigns. So they had the This Girl Can campaign, and they had the Join the Movement campaign, and they were exposed to posed, active, or like kind of natural environments to see if they could then increase body satisfaction, intention to exercise, resilience. And it was all about promoting positive and healthy eating behaviors. So really happily, it increased satisfaction. How people felt about themselves generally, intention to exercise, all of them went up. And even if they viewed women who were in these idealized perspectives, it didn't have a negative impact. There was, however, no long-lasting positive impact from the campaign either.
Yeah. So we'd need to be seeing that all the time instead of seeing the other stuff all the time for it to actually be impactful long-term, really.
Because people go back to social comparison and they continue to do it. So they need positive role models or positive interventions on a continuous basis as well.
Yeah.
Now, there are differences across gender. Okay, we'd be silly to say there isn't differences across gender. So there was another large-scale Australian study done by a couple of these colleagues, and I'm like in an echo chamber of an Australian
I was going to say,
space.
there's so much stuff in Australia.
But there really is. And it's, to be honest, if I found a study, I'm being a little bit selective. I'm not using poor quality research.
Well, that's
the whole point of this.
Point of this.
So there was another Australian study that I was looking at. So it's Lonergan et al. From 2020. And I put it in because it had 4,000 participants in it. So it's quite a substantial sample. But the big difference is they used 11 to 19-year-olds in this study. Okay. So we've spoken about everyone who's kind of over 20 so far. So what about the kids, or what about adolescents? And they looked at how photo-based social media behaviors, so let's pull it directly into social media. So taking, editing and engaging with something like a selfie are linked to eating disorder diagnoses amongst adolescents in Australia. Okay.
So that's a correlation, right? So it doesn't mean that doing that causes eating disorders. It could be that an eating disorder makes you more likely to edit your photo, or it could be something else.
Yeah. There's no cause and effect here. It could be eating disorder first.
Yeah.
Again, people have eating disorders now,
people just
I'm not going to say naturally, but within a sample anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just about the sampling of how someone is recruited in a study.
Yeah.
Now, 21% of these 40 or 4,000 participants met the DSM criteria for an eating disorder.
Wow.
Yeah. So at least one or multiple eating disorders, even though their BMIs were in the normal or healthy range.
Yeah. Well, that's a real problem with how eating disorders are diagnosed in the first place. Like for anorexia, you have to have a BMI under 18. And there are lots of people who are suffering with anorexia in a bigger body to the point where their body's shutting down, but they're called atypical anorexia. Just now, because of the BMI, which
with
is
this
a terrible
study
method anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. Wait, with this study, they used a reliable self-report measure. It followed the DSM criteria, but they looked at specific behaviors. So photo investment, that's the amount of time they were spending curating an image or a selfie, what they were doing in terms of the manipulation of it, avoidance-based behaviors on social media, and also investment in other people's selfies. Okay, so it's not just intrinsic behaviors, it's extrinsic ones as well.
So investment in other selfies, is that like engaging in that social comparison again, or just interest in how other people are doing it to learn from
commenting and engaging in other people's.
Okay.
Okay. They found the avoidance of posting selfies, high photo investment, so time and effort in planning and monitoring selfies. And this could be anything related from golden hour to time of day when you take your photograph, or the space that you take that photograph in.
Yeah, to taking 100 and only choosing one and all that kind of stuff, and then editing and But you're about to say that.
Photo manipulation, which is editing, and investment in other people's selfies. So that was increasing the positively associated risk of an eating disorder.
Okay. Increasing the risk of or correlated to?
Increasing the risk from meeting the criteria. So correlating to some of the behaviors, but not meeting enough DSM criteria to say you have an eating disorder.
Yeah. Okay.
So kind of negative social media behavior is being related to negative eating disorder behavior.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me.
Now, they found a relationship between these. So again, correlation, not causation.
Yeah.
Okay, so emphasize this on a continuous basis. They found that the relationship between social media behaviors and eating disorder risk is the same for males and females. Okay.
It makes sense to me because if you're extremely concerned about your body, you're going to manipulate and be invested in what photos you put up because you're worried about the perception of it, but also you're going to be worried about the food that you eat. Like, that makes perfect sense to me.
There's one key difference in terms of gender.
Okay.
Now, that was boys who reported higher avoidance of posting selfies generally are more likely than females to meet the anorexia criteria.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's a link back into body dissatisfaction and that behavior.
Okay, that's interesting.
So even if someone was experiencing anorexia as a female, they were still more likely to post those images.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with these social media behaviors, they reflect offline body image maintenance strategies.
Okay.
So similar avoidance checking, camouflaging, so where you wear baggier clothes, and they extend objectification just simply into that social media space or that digital space. I think it highlights the impact that social media behavior has, making someone vulnerable to an eating disorder. But what I like about it is that they look at matching online and offline behaviors, and then they provide support for healthier behaviors. So they have a different list of advice.
Okay.
I do also like that it's with a younger study. It was a longitudinal approach as well.
Okay, brilliant.
Okay. So there were other studies that have done this as well. There was a large-scale Norwegian study, and it took 10-year-olds. It then came back to them when they were 12 and came back to them when they're 14. So it's Steinbeck et al. Okay. And they measured physical appearance, self-esteem, and self-perceptions of themselves and their social media behaviors, and it was mixed methods.
Okay.
So lovely study design. The main social medias were the ones they were using, as you'd expect, so Snapchat and Instagram. And I have a couple of key takeaways from this particular study. So they found that increased other-oriented social media, so liking, commenting, engaging with someone else, was more likely to predict decreased appearance, self-esteem for females, but not for boys. Okay. Self-oriented social media use, so posting on your own page or sharing photographs, did not predict appearance, self-esteem in males or females.
Okay.
And a non-reciprocal effect was also found. So lower or higher self-esteem appearance did not predict changes in the types or in your social media behavior generally. So if you were low or high in your perception of your own appearance, self-esteem, you didn't change the way you behaved online as much, or change the platform you were using as much. You didn't go to other spaces.
Okay.
And the final finding, where people focus on other people on social media, was more likely to lead to upward social comparisons and exposure to idealized self-representations or presentations of other people.
Yeah.
So overall, the research supports that we have to have concerns around how we like or post comments on other people's photographs. So focusing on everyone else's behavior rather than just always our own. So consistently looking at these behaviors where I compare myself to someone else, I have a negative perception of my self-esteem. So we need to have some form of interventions where we look at how younger people are passively consuming or passively engaging with someone else, because that does spur negative comparisons of how we feel about each other. And that was particularly more so for females during adolescence than males.
It's interesting because like social comparison isn't universally bad. Like, it can be good for you. You compare yourself to someone who's doing a little better than you. It can inspire you to change and do something, particularly around, say, like fitness or, you know, skill level and things.
Yeah.
But at that particular point in time for appearance, it appears to be quite negative. And yet also at the same time, there are other findings that suggest that interacting with other people on social media is better for you than being passive and not interacting.
But it's also the type.
It's the type of interaction then.
It's the type of interaction, but it's also who you interact with.
Yeah, and what it's driven by, I suppose.
So like there's studies that like there's a piece of research I have that was conducted in Malaysia, and it looked at whether you were following or who you were following and its impact on you. So they looked at your self-esteem and your basically the mechanisms for how you consume different types of kind of influence in different platforms. So they looked at Instagram particularly, and they had a sample of around kind of university students, again, slightly younger, so around the age of 20, but they were looked at the types of celebrity or how much of their content was actually celebrity driven rather than from their peers. Now, they found that the majority frequently posted about themselves. They spent an hour online every day, but over 80% of their consumption was from celebrities.
And I know that's a problem.
That completely outside of your social circle,
and
not
they're
real
presenting
life.
something very idealized. Yeah.
Now, Instagram use in this particular study had a negative association to body image perceptions or body satisfaction amongst the participants, and it led to greater dissatisfaction because they were just seeing these idolized images of celebrities instead. Okay. So it's not just the platform or how you engage, it's also the type of content.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So filter through, and if someone is just posting this idealized self, if you do not have the resilience to say, well, clearly that's not real life, that doesn't belong in your timeline.
Yeah.
Or in your For You page or wherever it might be.
Yeah.
What I thought was quite interesting is they looked at self-appearance schemas, so how much you thought appearance mattered, and the gap between that and your actual and kind of idealized self and your actual self. And they found that Instagram had a greater negative effect for dissatisfaction when you had lower self-esteem generally.
Obviously,
if you had higher self-esteem, you could rebuff some of that.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. So if you're not feeling good about yourself and your ideal self is very far away from where you currently are, and you see these idealized representations, of course you're going to feel worse than if you actually feel pretty good about yourself.
Like you feel bad about yourself, you're watching celebrities every day, it's not going to have a positive impact regardless. And what I think is, again, comes back to this negative social support space is there's no difference for males or females. Okay.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So you really, really do need to curtail the type of timeline that you have and these active behaviors. I want to touch on one minority group. So I'm going to look at sexual minority men. Okay. So within the LGBT community and how that or how their social media consumption attributes to perceptions of body image. So there was a study done in 2018, and it was a fairly large sample. And they looked at just under 3,000 participants around the age of 34, or mean age of 34. And they looked at eating disorder behaviors and how they were connected to perceptions of body image and their social media consumption. And they used, again, image-focused social media. They used a much broader social media platform perspective because they had older participants at the age of 34. That makes me sad.
Ancient.
Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Tumblr, if you remember Tumblr. They also looked at like
even older
YouTube.
than you, of course I do.
But they also looked at like Twitter and LinkedIn and WordPress and blogging platforms, so non-image centric focused platforms. And they found that the image centric platforms correlated positively with higher levels of body dissatisfaction, surprise, surprise, and eating disorders amongst sexual minority men. And they particularly found that muscularity dissatisfaction, so coming back to Chris's work, was strongly associated to those image-based social media platforms. Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat were the ones that had significant positive relationships.
Okay.
The non-image centric platforms, Twitter, LinkedIn, WordPress, blogging-based platforms, had no relationship.
Okay, so you have to see it, not just talk about it.
You have to see it, not just talk about it. But it's also platforms like that, Twitter, LinkedIn, WordPress, blogging platforms. People do engage in social comparison in them, but it's just not in relation to their bodies.
Yeah.
Okay. Overall, the research does support that social media has a negative impact. It does not support a positive impact around body image, and it does contribute to dissatisfaction, unfortunately. I think we need to alter specific behaviors, how we choose to engage. So we spoke about the comparison, kind of consumption behaviors. We spoke about how we curate or alter our images, the time we spend doing that, the unhealthily associated behaviors to the DSM criteria, and how those, hopefully, if we alter those behaviors, we can mitigate or reduce the negative impact of dissatisfaction overall, hopefully.
Through social media.
Through social media platforms, yeah. Now, media literacy is needed. So around those spaces, so how long you're spending on something, or the kind of awareness of if your timeline is purely focused on, like the last piece of research from Malaysia we were talking about, where it's overwhelmingly celebrity content,
or whether there's
it's not real life.
Yeah, or whether there's a lot of image manipulation, like we're talking about lighting, etc., and you're seeing unrealistic things that are highly posed or photoshopped, or
but
those
I think
kind of things as well.
It's not necessarily just like celebrity content. It's also if you're male or female and you're just following like fitness, health, or wellness influencers.
Yeah,
they don't need to be a Hollywood celebrity.
No.
That's still going to have a negative impact on you.
Yeah.
And knowing which ones to follow, curating your timeline. So like you were mentioning Ben Carpenter, if you're following an influencer like that has a balanced approach, that's okay. And that's a helpful resource that social media provides you.
Because he reminds me of the research that Chris Stiff is doing, where he is like breaking down some of those problematic idealized images. So he's engaging in that work. And there are lots of other influencers who are doing that. And they're the kind of ethical influencers, as far as I can see, the ones who are like, look, this is what it takes to get to this. And they're very realistic about it. And like he would talk about, he was a fitness model at one point, and he would talk about how ill he was to look like that peak fitness. It was not healthy at all. It was disordered. And I think that's really healthy for people to hear.
But it's a balanced argument.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's not even an argument, it's a balanced discussion. It's a balanced, informative piece that allows you to make an assessment and go, they're not presenting this idealized, perfect perception all of the time, which is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
So that is our very happy topic. It's one of the more recent negative ones that I've had to do this time.
I think it's interesting because there are some ways that we can combat some of the negative aspects of it. But then we also exist in this society which has so much of this going on outside of social media. Social media is amplifying it because you can follow these types of people. But it's a huge societal discourse that needs to be had in a healthy way. And I just don't know if people... There's a lot of people trying to do it, but I don't know if people want to hear it.
But social comparison is a human behavior.
Yeah, oh, it totally is.
And it is a really common human behavior where we assess ourselves in comparison to each other all of the time.
Yeah, it's how we learn about ourselves.
And it's whether you're developing a sense of identity or seeing something someone does to take on characteristics of someone else that you feel are positive, or you would like to be like that person. That's okay. We like to be liked.
Yeah, like I try to be organised like you. I would love to be as organised as you.
But you're looking at this, whether it's in traditional media consumption, whether it's in TV or in social media, and there are aspects of social media that can contribute
really
negatively to this. Especially because we're on our own. And if we are watching the TV with mum or dad or with friends or whoever it might be, your other half, and you're sat there with ice cream or whatever, and you're watching that Wolverine movie, you're going, Jesus Christ, I wouldn't be able for that now. That's a very different behavior to, oh my God, I can't wait to look like that, and putting it down and having someone tell you the advice to do that. So similar to the Am and Mom discussion.
Yeah.
These are very different ways to approach how we perceive ourselves. And obviously there's going to be varying levels of resilience in that too.
Thank you for depressing me this morning.
You're very welcome.
Much appreciated.
So there's a number of different support services I'd recommend. So Bodywhys, if you Google PSI, so Psychological Society of Ireland, they have a counsellor network you can go and take a look at for more information. The Health Service Executive, so the HSE, has a number of resources in this space too. So do Spun Out. So you can take a look at some of those in relation to healthy eating behaviours and positive social media consumption. I will also put in a couple of different links to some of these papers for you to take a look at too.
You've been listening to In Bits, the podcast that deconstructs our digital lives. I am Nicola Fox-Hamilton.
And I'm Liam Challoner.
You can find us on our socials, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, at In Bits Podcast. We're also both on LinkedIn and we post there as well. We don't have an official In Bits LinkedIn though. We would love to hear from you. So follow us to find out what our next topics will be, to get in touch about your own experiences and thoughts on these topics, and to tell us what you'd like us to talk about, because we are currently looking at what new episodes we'll do. We have some ideas. Actually, we have a really long list. But if there's anything you particularly like to hear, please let us know.
Do. This episode was produced and edited by Owen Hurley. Thank you, Owen, for our intro music, and thank you for listening. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yes. Thank you, Liam.
Thank you.